Hey, you people, first week of the year is now done and dusted. I hope it was a good start to the year for all of you and that you're beginning to pick up on what the blessing of God looks like. And my prayer for all of you is that you really experience the wonder and the mystery of God's blessing. I want to do one last thing. There's so many other things we could say, but I'm going to cut it today at this one. You do know that, when we talk to our kids, we tell them some stupid stuff. We often say to our kids, the grass is not greener on the other side. Well, I know what you're trying to say, and I guess there's an element of truth in that. But as much as there's an element of truth in it, it's not the whole truth. Because the grass is very often, according to the Bible, greener on the other side. You see, for many Christians, the blessing is not on this side of the line. The blessing is on the other side of the line. You see, yesterday we spoke about the blessing of obedience. Obedience is crossing the line. And when you cross the line of obedience, of course it's greener on the other side of the line that is of obedience. When we learn what it means to trust God, there's not grass is much greener on the other side of that line as well. So there are many lines that if we could cross them, we would find that the blessing of God is on the other side of the line. Now come back with me to the Garden of Eden. And man messed up in the Garden of Eden, did they not? And when they were kicked out of the garden and God sent them out east of Eden, he put an angel in charge of the gate, and Adam and Eve would have looked back into the Garden of Eden and said, man, guys, the blessing's on that side of the line. The blessing is on the other side of the line. And God said to them once, you can't sit here all the time just pondering your issues. You need to move on in life. And so they began to learn, as mankind does and as history has taught us, that the blessing is very often on the other side of the line. Might I just qualify it by saying this? If God has put a line in place, don't cross it, because God has said, stay the side of that line. So any moral, ethical, or whatever kind of theological line that God establishes to be there, don't you dare try and think that the grass is greener on the other side of that line. It's not at all. But the line is definitely a lot greener on the other side of some lines. Look at Moses. There's Moses in the wilderness, and God says to Moses, the grass is greener in the wilderness. And Moses looked across to the wilderness and said, God, it's just a desert. God said, don't worry about that. It's greener on the other side. And so he found out that it was. When he got into the wilderness and began to experience God's deliverance from enemies, God's provision with manna and water and the supernatural hand of God, he would have looked back at Egypt and says, man, the grass is greener on this side. And then he gets to the Jordan River and he says to Joshua, look across the Jordan River. This is dry and dusty in the wilderness. The grass of the Canaan, of the promised land, is far greener than it is on this side in the wilderness. Joshua, you got to get them across the line. And we see how over and over. Have a look at this one. Everybody's thinking, oh, it's going to be so scary to die. Why would it be scary to die when we know that the grass of heaven is far greener than it is on this side? On the other side of the line that is death, people, it's very green. It's very beautiful. It's awesome on the other side of the line. But here's what we have to do. We're going to name some of these lines. We've spoken about what it means to sacrifice, did we not? There's a line. Its grass is always greener on the other side of a sacrifice that you may need to make. The grass is always greener on the other side of what it means to trust God. Because you will find that when you trust God and God comes through for you, you're going to look back and say, without a doubt, it's greener now than it was on the other side. We said the line of obedience is a line. When you cross that line, the grass is automatically a whole bunch greener on the other side of that line, if you'll just cross the line. But here's the big one, and I think for many this will be the biggest one, is the line of faith. When Joshua had to take the children of Israel into the promised land, he was very nervous because Moses had died. And God said to him, Joshua, Moses is dead. The job is yours to take these people to the other side. Joshua, with fear, said, Lord, I'm not sure I can do that. God said, of course you can. Just step across the line of faith. You see, in the land, on the other side of this Jordan River, we operate on a different currency. The currency is now the land of faith. I've just come back from the United States. You know what? They didn't want to take my rand. I couldn't even buy a cup of coffee with my rand. They said, we don't operate in that currency here. We have a different currency. So when you become a believer and you lead yourself or led into the promised land of the giants and the challenges, but taking new ground, you're going to find you're going to have to exercise your faith, and you will find that as you exercise your faith more and more, that the grass is always greener on that side. There's nothing more beautiful than a blessed Christian life. There's nothing more beautiful than a life that is lived by faith in God, and faith becomes the currency. Every day, people, that you're a believer, you're going to need to cross that line. You're living in a different land. It's the land where we cross every day the line of faith, and we allow our faith to lead us into the ever-greening pastures of what it means to be a child of God. That, people, is normal Christian living. I sometimes meet people and I think, yo, if only I could be like that guy. He's living a most incredible Christian life. And I look at him now and I say, actually, he's not. That's the normal Christian life. Anything short of living like that is abnormal. A normal Christian life is a life where we live by faith in God and we trust Him for our daily bread. We minister with all of our hearts according to that which He has called us to do. That's a normal Christian life. So for many people, maybe you're one of them today, the Christian experience has been a bit of a disappointing one for you, to say the least. You thought it was going to be so awesome, and it's turned out to be dry and dusty. Look out. Look to the other side of the line of faith, and you will see the grass is a lot greener. Don't be afraid to cross to that side. So the blessing of God is out there, people. I hope that you remember that there's no substitute for it. I hope that you remember that you're blessed to be a blessing. You're not meant to hoard it. You get a bigger cup if your blessing is full. There's no blessing without sacrifice, unless somebody has sacrificed before you. That blessing is in your hand. That beautiful book is in your hand. And as you read it and obey it, there's blessing that goes with that. And then there's blessing always on the other side of the line. So I will see you all on the other side of the line, where the grass is a whole bunch greener. Have a fantastic day, you good people. Cheers. Bye.